What is going on, guys? I'm Mori here, and welcome back again to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the potential of a second Five Nights at Freddy's chapter to Dead by Daylight. Guys, before this video begins, be sure to leave a like on this video, and be sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel. I cover DBD news, speculation, and more. And in today's video, I'm actually going to be covering a concept about Secret of the Mimic in Dead by Daylight. This is actually a concept I want to do where I cover a bunch of DBD concepts for both powers, for killers, as well as survivors. Of course, Secret of the Mimic is a chapter that we know that Behavior is interested in doing in the first place, so this is actually quite plausible. About almost a month ago, we got news that DBD was actually interested in doing a Secret of the Mimic chapter, and that got me wondering, what would a Secret of the Mimic chapter even look like? And well, there's actually a concept that I found on Reddit that I'm going to show to you guys that actually is pretty solid. So before we even get to that, I want to know what you guys think about a second Fnaf chapter. Are you guys down with it? Are you guys feeling it? How are we feeling about a second Five Nights at Freddy's chapter coming to Dead by Daylight? So without further ado, let's get right to this. So first thing first, the survivor and the killer. The survivor for this chapter is going to be Edwin Murray, the creator of the Mimic, and of course the killer for this chapter would be the Mimic. Now, I think Edwin Murray being a survivor is actually a really cool choice. I know a lot of people were really bummed about the fact that Michael Afton was not included with the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter, so getting a chapter where, well, there actually is a survivor would be really neat. And unlike Michael Afton, we have an in-game appearance for Edwin Murray, so it would make sense. That being said, though, I would still love a Michael Afton skin. I feel like if Edwin Murray was, say, the survivor for a Secret of the Mimic chapter, it would be cool if you can get, like, maybe a legendary skin for, well, Michael. Alright, so let's take a look at both the power and the perks for the Mimic, and that would also just be his killer name, the Mimic. It's a perfect killer name already. Shapeshifter's Wrath. In the realm of the entity, the Mimic began to replicate a particular gruesome way of violence. Special objective, mascot suit. At the start of the trial, 8 mascot suits spawn in random positions across the map. Survivors can enter a mascot suit to hide, similar to lockers. If the Mimic interacts with a suit containing a survivor, it performs a snatch, instantly grabbing and carrying them. When any character exits a mascot suit, it disappears for 60 seconds before respawning in a different location. Special interaction, shapeshift. The Mimic can target and enter any mascot suit within the line of sight, disguising itself inside of it. While inside a suit and standing still, the Mimic becomes undetectable and indistinguishable from an inactive suit. While disguised, the Mimic can change into any visible mascot suit, shifting locations without exposing its presence to survivors. Changing takes 0.75 seconds, increasing by 0.25 seconds with each consecutive change. Exiting a mascot suit resets the change duration. Special ability, Mimicry. After injuring a survivor, the Mimic gains their voice print for 30 seconds or until another survivor is injured. Survivors within 32 meters of the Mimic hear groans of pain in the voice of an injured survivor. When the injured survivor breaks chase, the Mimic emits a fake scream using their voice, triggering a false loud noise notification for all other survivors. So first thing first, I like this power a lot for the Mimic. I feel like it encapsulates him as a character very well, and I also really like that special ability where he can kind of copy the voice lines of survivors, mimicking their groans. I think that's really neat. I know when I was talking about a power for the Mimic, people were like, oh, he can like play as other survivors and like trick people. That's not quite, I think, a fitting power for the Mimic, because he doesn't really mimic real people in the sense that he like wears their skin or whatever. He can't just become people, but the fact that he can mimic their voices and throw people off, I feel like is a cool concept to use. And from, if I'm reading this correctly, it seems like the Mimic kind of teleports to these different costumes scattered around the map, so the Mimic would essentially have some sort of teleport feature within him. This is, again, exactly kind of what I want from a Mimic chapter. I kind of covered this power somewhat in a video already. This is a little different than what I was stating in my video, because in my video, the costumes had different sort of abilities that boosted the Mimic. Like, for example, I thought maybe some costumes would be better making him faster, other ones would make him more stealthy, things of that nature. But this works too. I think this is still rather nice. I think it's interesting that survivors can actually hide inside of these costumes. I think that's really neat. As a survivor, I don't know if I would want to hide inside of a mascot suit. I feel like I would rather just go in a locker, especially because I feel like lockers, you know, there's perks tied to them, and I feel like if you're using a mascot suit to hide, I feel like you can't even get that value from, say, something like Built to Last. So I think that hiding in a locker would still be preferable as a survivor, so maybe there could be some sort of other benefit for a survivor hiding inside of a suit rather than a locker. Because to me, it kind of feels almost like a situation where the dredge, where if I know I'm going against a dredge, I won't go in a locker, because why would I do that? I'd rather just not go in it at all and not have to worry about being, you know, grabbed. So I think maybe with this power in mind, it should be tweaked a little bit so there's some additional benefits for the survivor going inside of, I guess, a costume. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but I do feel like there needs to be maybe a little more incentive to hide inside of a suit than a locker, unless lockers are removed for some reason, which that would be kind of crazy. But no, I think this is a good, I guess, power to build off of. I just think that on the survivor's end, there's really no point to the costumes. Alright, let's read the perks. Left to rot, unique mimic perk. You waited long enough, it's time to resurface. When a survivor is hooked for the first time, that survivor becomes your obsession. Each time your obsession unhooks another survivor, they become exposed for 6 to 12 to 18 seconds, while you gain 4% haste for 5 seconds. Back to bed. The thought of you causes your victims to suffer from ominous hallucinations. Every 30 seconds, a random survivor sees a false aura of a generator or teammate. The aura disappears if approached by the survivor, causing them to scream and reveal their location to you. The perk has a cooldown of 40 to 35 to 30 seconds. I think that's a fun and interesting perk. I really like that. Time to play. When you're around, playtime is never over. Each time you chase with a survivor, time to play activates. If the survivor escapes without being injured, their generator repair speed is decreased by 6, 8, 12% for the next 30 seconds. I think Back to Bed is really cool. I like that one. I think that one's really interesting. I don't really care much for time to play, to be honest, but I do think Left to Rot could be kind of cool. I think if you're playing a killer that can teleport, which I guess the Mimic would be able to do so, I think Left to Rot would be really, really helpful. But Back to Bed to me is probably one of my favorite perks from these three here. Alright, let's move on to Edwin Murray, Creative Engineer. A brilliant mind shaped by loss and obsession, Edwin Murray uses ingenuity to support teammates and manipulate the trial during generator repair. Put together. You've been taking things apart your whole life, putting them together is second nature. When a generator is completed, Put Together activates. The closest generator creates a loud noise notification. Survivors within 16 meters of that generator leave no scratch marks for 4 to 5 to 6 seconds. The perk has a cooldown of 60 seconds. Helpful tools. You always bring something of your own design. When you are injured and holding an item that has been fully depleted, press the ability button to trigger helpful tools. The held item recovers 4, 6, 8 charges, but its effectiveness is reduced to be an equivalent of a lower tier. The perk has a cooldown of 60 seconds. Emergency Protocol. You've trained your hands to respond under pressure. Each time a generator you're currently working on explodes due to a missed skill check, surge, jolt, or other killer effects, emergency protocols activate. Your healing and repair speed is increased by 25 to 30 to 35% speed. This bonus is lost when you are put in the dying state. I think that emergency protocol is a little busted, to be honest, but I mean, the other ones are okay, I guess. I feel like I would rather use Built to Last instead of helpful tools, but I think Emergency Protocol is definitely busted. Either way, though, I think they're fitting for Edwin. I think they all thematically fit him pretty well, so I think it does fit him really nice. And then, of course, we have the Mimics add-ons. I like that the Tiger plushie is an iridescent add-on. I think that's really, really nice. So I don't want to go over every single add-on, but one of them I thought was really cool is the Tiger plush one. A random mascot suit spawns as a special white tiger suit. If worn and in chase, survivors suffer from hallucination and false noise notifications. That is really cool. I actually like how much that kind of changes the game. I like that this one would straight up just add another costume that you can't normally get otherwise. So I really like that add-on. Again, I'm not going to go over every single add-on on here because, you know, then I'll be making like an hour-long video. But I do really, really like the iridescent tiger plush add-on. I think that's a really nice one, and I really like add-ons that changed things like completely in a trial. And this would change things completely because it would literally add an entirely new suit that does something completely different. Alright, moving on, the Mori and Killer Flair. So the Mori would be that the Mimic leans over an injured survivor and screams their voice. It drills its arms into the survivor's flesh and tears them apart. The scene skips to a survivor's dead body stuck inside of a bloody mascot. The Mimic puts on the suit's headpiece, fully covering the survivor's body, then turns its head 180 to stare at the camera. The suit appears to be different for each survivor based on their personality. So Dwight would be a hedgehog, Meg would be a puppy, Claudette a bee, Jake a lion. For those unfamiliar with Secret of the Mimic puts dead bodies from its victims into costumes that are associated or related to whatever their victim's personality is. It's kind of like a weird messed up thing that the Mimic does after it kills somebody. But yeah, I think that's really cool. I really like that. I'm just curious how long this Mori would be, because I really like the concept of putting survivors in like a costume. I know that for Springtrap, that was a concept a lot of people had, but I feel like for it to not look janky and for it to not look weird, I feel like it would have to be a rather long Mori. So I really do like that concept. It's something I actually did like about Springtrap Moris that, you know, people were speculating on before he got released. But I think it just comes down to how long the Mori would be. But I do think it would be cool. Killer Flair. The menu theme uses faint orchestral instruments and static noises reminiscent of VHS and vintage audio recording. Menu animations and the voice mimic previously played killer. That is cool. Changes height based on the previous killer. If the previous killer was the Mimic, it will instead appear as short and holding a white tiger plush in reference of David. If the previous killer was the Unknown or the Drudge, it will instead mimic the screams of survivors and their idling. If the previous killer was the Houndmaster, it will occasionally imitate dog barking instead. If the previous killer was the Twins, it will constantly change its size to imitate either Charlotte or Victor. I really like this idea. I really like this. Of course, they probably wouldn't be able to do it like licensed killers, for example, but when it comes to the original killers in the game, I think it would be really awesome if the Mimic mimic them. So say your last character that you played as was the Trapper. Okay, that's a little boring because he just kind of stands there. Say your last killer was the Hag. You're one of the 0.3% of Hag players out there. You're playing the Hag, and you switch over to the Mimic, and the Mimic is literally doing the same exact thing that the Hag was just doing a second ago. The Mimic is a lot smaller, it's hunched over, it's like messing with the ground. Oh my god, that would be so cool. I'm kind of fanning out a bit about that. Seeing the Mimic replicate the behaviors of other DBD killers, I think would be really neat. I think if they add the Mimic into Dead by Daylight, this would be one of the coolest things they can do. And it's not even gameplay. Alrighty guys, well that pretty much covers everything about this concept. I will leave a link down below if you want to go check it out for yourself on Reddit. This is one of the best concepts I've actually seen related to the Mimic in Dead by Daylight so far. I like that they chose Edwin Murray as a survivor to thematically keep the theme of Secret of the Mimic instead of just, I guess, pushing Michael Afton, because I know a lot of people, including myself, really want Michael Afton in the second Fnaf chapter, and I think it's a high likelihood whenever it does happen, it will probably come with Michael. But I like Edwin Murray as a character. He's a character that really grew on me. I think Secret of the Mimic did a really good job with their characters, and needless to say, I'm a fan of this. I really would look forward to this as a chapter for Dead by Daylight. I know the Mimic is debated about being the second chapter, but we already know that Behavior wants to do it. We know that it's the next, I guess, primary antagonist of the Fnaf series. I know some people who don't like the new Fnaf games want it to be like Ennard, and as much as I would love Ennard in Dead by Daylight, I just don't see him being his own killer. I think the Mimic would be the second chapter, and I think this is probably what his power would be similar to being. Again, it's kind of similar to a concept I came up with not that long ago. It was very bare bones, but the only difference I would mainly have is that while in costumes, the Mimic gets little bonuses depending on what costume he's in. I know the White Tiger add-on kind of did that, but I kind of feel like the base costume should have slight bonuses to them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, give my channel, subscribe. I'll see you next video. If you want to see me cover more concepts, let me know. And I'll see you guys next video. Have a great day. Bye guys.